This is not a place for a poor black girl to come in here and pretend to be a lawyer.
Harper's voice sliced through courtroom 3B, cold and sharp. The kind of voice that didn't just silence a room, it humiliated it. Every head turned toward Maya Williams. She stood alone at the defense table, one thin folder in front of her, her hands resting on it as if it were the only solid thing in the room. For a brief moment, no one spoke. Then a low murmur moved through the gallery, followed by a quiet, unmistakable chuckle. Maya felt the heat rise to her face, but she kept her posture straight. "Your Honor," she said carefully, "I am a licensed attorney in the state of Georgia, and I am here representing the defendant, Evelyn Williams." Judge Harper stared at her for a long moment, then let out a short, humorless laugh. "You?" he said. "You're the lawyer?" "Yes, Your Honor." He leaned forward, his eyes hard. "You come into my courtroom with no proper filings, no senior counsel, no experience in corporate property litigation, and you expect me to believe you belong here?" "I filed a response," Maya began. "You filed it wrong," the judge snapped. "You filed it late. And now you want this court to slow down a multi-million-dollar development project because you don't know how to follow procedure?" Maya opened her folder with slightly trembling hands. "Your Honor, the hearing date was moved up and Before she could finish, the judge suddenly grabbed a plastic water bottle from his bench and hurled it across the room. The bottle struck the side of Maya's head and bounced off her shoulder, clattering onto the floor. The sound echoed loudly in the silent courtroom. Maya froze. A sharp gasp came from somewhere behind her. The bailiff shifted his weight but didn't move. No one spoke. "Maybe that will help you focus," Judge Harper said coldly. "You don't walk into my courtroom wasting my time with excuses." Maya slowly bent down, picked up the bottle, and placed it on the table. Her cheek burned where it had hit her. Her ears rang, but she forced herself to stand straight again. From the plaintiff's table, Daniel Crawford let out a quiet laugh, then another. "Well," Daniel said loud enough for everyone to hear, "this is a new one. Opposing counsel getting disciplined before the case even starts." A few people in the gallery laughed nervously. Daniel walked slowly toward Maya, stopping just a few feet away from her. He looked her up and down her inexpensive suit, her worn briefcase, the red mark forming on her cheek. "You're not a real lawyer," he said quietly, but the courtroom was so silent everyone could hear it. "You're a legal aid girl playing dress-up in a real courtroom." Maya swallowed. "I am counsel of record for the defendant." Daniel smirked. "Counsel of record," he repeated, amused. "Do you even know what that means? This isn't traffic court. This isn't small claims. This is corporate litigation. People like you don't win cases like this. I am asking the court for a continuance so I can access the original property records," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. Daniel suddenly leaned closer and spat. The spit hit the side of Maya's face and slid slowly down her cheek. The courtroom went dead silent. Maya didn't move. For a second, her brain didn't seem to understand what had just happened. Then she slowly raised her hand and wiped her cheek, her fingers shaking. Daniel stepped back, adjusting his cuffs like nothing had happened. "File your paperwork next time," he said casually, "or stay out of rooms where adults work." Maya's hands were trembling now. She tried to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. "Your Honor, I am requesting—" "Enough," Judge Harper barked. "I have had enough of this." Maya looked at him, her eyes wide now, the confidence from earlier gone, replaced by something much more human: fear. "Your Honor, please," she said, her voice unsteady. "I just need time to get the documents from the city. The records are from 1989, and they are not in the online system yet. And you should have thought about that before you walked into my courtroom unprepared," the judge said. Then he looked at the bailiff. "Officer, approach." The bailiff stepped forward. Maya's eyes widened. "Your Honor, this is contempt of court," Judge Harper said. "You are wasting this court's time. You are unprepared. And you are arguing procedure you clearly don't understand. I should have you removed from this courtroom in handcuffs." The words hit Maya harder than the bottle had. "Please, Your Honor," she said quickly, panic now clearly in her voice. "Please don't do that. I'm just asking for a continuance. My grandmother is 82 years old. She will lose her home if we don't have time to." "Officer," the judge repeated. The bailiff gently but firmly took Maya's arm. Maya's breath caught. "Please," she said, her voice breaking now. "Please don't arrest me. I'm not trying to disrespect the court. I'm just trying to defend my client. Please, Your Honor, I'm begging you." The entire courtroom watched. Daniel Crawford said nothing now. He just watched, his face calm, his eyes observant, like a man studying a situation that was turning out even better than he expected. "Your Honor," Maya said again, her voice shaking, "please, just give me 48 hours. That's all I'm asking. If I can't find anything, we won't fight the eviction. But please, don't take me to jail. I didn't do anything wrong." The room was so quiet you could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning. Judge Harper looked at her for a long moment, at the fear in her eyes, at the red mark on her cheek, at the young woman standing alone in a room full of people who wanted her to fail. Finally he spoke. "Release her," he said. The bailiff let go of Maya's arm. "I am granting a 48-hour continuance," the judge said hollowly. "We reconvene Friday at 9 a.m. If you are not fully prepared by then, Miss Williams, I will not be so patient a second time, and I will not hesitate to hold you in contempt. Do you understand me?" Maya nodded quickly. "Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor." Court is adjourned. The gavel slammed down. People began to stand, whispering to each other as they filed out. Maya slowly gathered her papers, her hands still shaking. As she turned to leave, Daniel Crawford stepped close to her again and quietly placed a business card on top of her folder. $500,000, he said softly. "That's what my client is offering your grandmother for that house. Take the deal. You're not built for this kind of fight." Maya looked at the card but didn't pick it up. Daniel leaned closer and whispered, "Today was the easy part." He straightened, smiled politely, and walked away. Maya stood there for a long moment, staring at the card, then at the empty judge's bench, then at the doors of the courtroom. Her cheek still stung. Her arm still felt the pressure of the bailiff's hand. Her chest still felt tight from the moment she thought she was going to be handcuffed and taken to jail. She picked up her folder, left the card on the table, and walked out of the courtroom on unsteady legs. By the time she reached the hallway, her hands had stopped shaking, and something else inside her had stopped shaking too. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with something colder, something harder. They thought she was weak. Friday morning she was going to make them regret that. But the story didn't start in the courtroom. It started with a house. The house sat at the end of Maple Street in Brookside, an old working-class neighborhood on the west side of Atlanta where the sidewalks were cracked. The porches were wide, and everybody still waved when you drove by, even if they didn't know your name. It was a small wooden house, painted a fading pale blue, with white trim that had been repainted so many times the edges of the boards looked soft and rounded. The front porch sagged slightly on the left side, and the screen door made a familiar creaking sound every time it opened. In the front yard stood a large oak tree, older than the house, older than the road, its branches stretching wide like it had been protecting that piece of land long before any of them were born. Maya parked her car at the curb and turned off the engine, but she didn't get out right away. Her hands were still on the steering wheel. She could see the house through the windshield, the late afternoon sun hitting the windows just right, making the glass glow gold. For a moment, she was not a lawyer with a court date in 48 hours. She was 10 years old again, running up those porch steps while her grandmother yelled from inside to wipe her feet before she tracked mud across the floor. She finally opened the car door and stepped out. The air smelled like cut grass and someone's barbecue down the street. A radio was playing somewhere, an old soul song her grandmother used to hum while cooking on Sundays. The screen door opened before Maya even reached the steps. Evelyn Williams stepped out slowly, holding the door frame with one hand. She was a small woman now, age having curved her back and slowed her steps, but her eyes were still sharp, still observant. "You look tired, baby," Evelyn said. Maya forced a small smile. "Long day." Evelyn's eyes moved to Maya's cheek. The red mark was still faintly visible. "What happened?" her grandmother asked quietly. Maya touched her cheek without thinking. "Nothing. Just a long day in court." Evelyn looked at her for a long moment, the way only someone who had known you your entire life could look at you, like she could see the truth standing right behind your words. "Come inside," Evelyn said. "I made some food. You think better when you eat." Inside, the house smelled like fried chicken, black-eyed peas, and cornbread. The television in the living room was on low volume, Some evening news anchor talking about rising property values and new development on the west side of the city. Maya set her folder down on the kitchen table. The same table where she had done her homework as a kid. The same table where her grandfather used to read the newspaper every morning before work. Evelyn placed a plate in front of her. Eat. Maya didn't realize how hungry she was until she took the first bite. She hadn't eaten since early morning. They sat in silence for a few minutes. The kind of silence that wasn't uncomfortable, just familiar. Finally, Evelyn spoke. They still trying to take the house? Maya nodded. Yeah. They offer money again? 500,000. Evelyn let out a small breath through her nose. That's a lot of money. It is, Maya said quietly. Evelyn looked around the kitchen slowly at the old cabinets, the worn linoleum floor, the clock on the wall that had been ticking a little too loud for as long as Maya could remember. Your granddaddy built that porch with his own hands, Evelyn said. Came back from Vietnam and said he wasn't ever letting anybody tell him where he could live again. Took him 2 summers. Worked at the plant all day. Came home and built that porch at night. Maya listened, saying nothing. He planted that oak tree the year your mama was born, Evelyn continued. Said he wanted something that would still be standing after he was gone. She looked at Maya. I ain't selling this house. I know, Maya said softly. I'm gonna die in this house, Evelyn said. Not dramatic, not angry, just a simple fact. They can take everything else, but they ain't taking this. Maya looked down at her plate. Grandma, if we lose the case, they can force you out. Evelyn reached across the table and put her hand over Maya's. Her hand was small and warm and rough from a lifetime of work. Then we don't lose, Evelyn said. Maya swallowed. It's not that simple. The lawyer they hired, he's the best corporate attorney in the city. And the judge, she stopped. The judge what? Evelyn asked. Maya shook her head. Nothing. Evelyn squeezed her hand. That man in that courtroom today, she said quietly. He made you feel small, didn't he? Maya didn't answer. I seen that look before, Evelyn continued. I seen it on men who thought they were better than us. I seen it on bank managers and police officers and landlords. They look at you like you already lost before you even open your mouth. She leaned back in her chair. But let me tell you something, Maya. This house right here? This house was built by a man who people told was nothing his whole life. Too poor, too black, too uneducated, too everything. And he built this house anyway. Maya felt her throat tighten. Evelyn pointed toward the front yard. You see that tree out there? Roots go deep. Storm come, wind blow, branches break. But that tree's still there. You know why? Maya shook her head slightly. Because you can't move something that grew where it belongs, Evelyn said. They sat in silence again. The clock on the wall ticked. The news on the television talked about new luxury apartments coming soon to the west side, starting in the high 6 figures. Finally, Maya spoke. Grandma, if I can prove the company doesn't actually own the land, we can stop the eviction. Then prove it, Evelyn said simply. It's not easy. The records are old. Some of them aren't even digitized. I have to go down to the city records office tomorrow and look through physical files. Evelyn nodded. Then that's what you do. Maya looked at her grandmother. I was scared today, she admitted quietly. For a minute, I thought the judge was really going to have me arrested. Evelyn didn't look surprised. You still went back in there and talked, didn't you? Yeah. Then you wasn't that scared, Evelyn said. Maya let out a small laugh. The first one all day. I was terrified. Evelyn smiled a little. Being brave don't mean you ain't scared. It just means you do the job anyway. Maya looked around the kitchen again, the old refrigerator covered in magnets, the faded family photos on the wall, her grandfather in a military uniform, her mother, as a little girl standing in front of the same oak tree that was still out there. This was never just a house. This was proof that her family had been here, that they had worked, lived, loved, struggled, and stayed. If she lost this case, it wouldn't just be a legal defeat, it would be an erasure. Before I continue this story, if you feel what Maya is fighting for, hit the like button and tell me where you are watching this story from. You never know. Someone living near you might be watching this same story right now. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Maya finished her food, then pulled the folder back toward her and opened it on the kitchen table. All right, she said quietly, more to herself than to her grandmother. Let's see what they're hiding. Outside, The evening sun dropped behind the oak tree, and its shadow stretched across the front yard, long and unmovable, like it had no intention of ever leaving. While Maya was trying to save a home, another man was trying to erase it. Daniel Crawford stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office on the 39th floor, looking down at Atlanta as the city lights began to turn on one by one. From up here, the streets looked clean, organized, almost peaceful. You couldn't see the broken sidewalks, the old houses, or the people who had lived in the same neighborhoods for 40 years and were now being pushed out block by block. From up here, the city looked like numbers, and Daniel Crawford understood numbers very well. Behind him, a large conference table filled most of the room. 3 people sat there now. A man in an expensive gray suit, a younger man with a laptop open in front of him, and a woman flipping through architectural drawings. The man in the gray suit, Victor Lang, was the CEO of Hamilton Crown Development. He didn't look like a villain. He looked like a banker, or a politician, or a man who donated to hospitals and had buildings named after him. "Tell me again," Victor said calmly, "why we are still talking about one house." Daniel turned from the window and walked back to the table. "Because the one house sits in the middle of everything," he said. He tapped the architectural drawings spread across the table. "Parking entrance goes here. Retail corridor here. Utilities connect through this line. Without that property, the entire layout has to be redesigned." The younger man with the laptop spoke without looking up. "Redesign would cost approximately $3.2 million and delay construction at least 8 months. Victor sighed softly. "All of this, because of one old woman." "Not the old woman," Daniel said. "The granddaughter." Victor looked up. "The lawyer?" Daniel nodded once. "She's the problem." Victor leaned back in his chair. "She didn't look like a problem." "That's what I thought yesterday," Daniel said. "But she cited Rule 56F, without notes, under pressure, in front of a hostile judge. Most young lawyers wouldn't even know that rule exists, let alone use it at the right moment." The woman with the architectural plans frowned slightly. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying she's smarter than she looks," Daniel replied. "And she's emotionally invested. That makes her dangerous. Smart and desperate is a bad combination on the other side of a case." Victor folded his hands on the table. "Then make it go away." Daniel was quiet for a moment. "We offered $500,000. She didn't even touch the card." Victor gave a small smile. "Everyone touches the card eventually." "Maybe," Daniel said. "But she's not fighting for money. She's fighting for the house. That's harder to negotiate with." The younger man finally looked up from his laptop. "We could push the city inspection angle faster. If the property gets declared unsafe, the city can condemn it. Then it's not an eviction. It's a safety removal." Victor looked at Daniel. "Can we do that?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He walked back to the window again and looked down at the city. "When I started practicing law," he said slowly, "an older partner told me something. He said, 'Dan, the law is not about right and wrong. It's about who can prove what, and who can last longer.'" He turned back to the room. "That girl thinks this case is about justice. That's why she's going to lose." Victor stood up, straightening his jacket. "I don't care how you do it, Daniel. Delay her. Pressure her. Settle with her. I want that property cleared before the end of the quarter. Investors are already asking questions." He started toward the door, then stopped. "And Daniel, don't underestimate her again. I've seen small problems turn into expensive ones." After they left, Daniel stood alone in the conference room for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Yeah," he said when the person answered. "It's Crawford. I need a full background report on someone. Maya Williams. Attorney. Legal aid. I want everything. School records, financials, family, debts, parking tickets. I don't care. I want to know how she lives, who she talks to, and what she's afraid of." He listened for a moment, then said, "Because everyone is afraid of something. And once you know what it is, you own the case." He hung up and slipped the phone back into his pocket. Down on the street, far below his office, traffic moved slowly through Brookside, past old houses and small shops, and people who had no idea that men in rooms like this were deciding whether their homes would still exist next year. Daniel looked out over the city again, but this time he wasn't thinking about buildings or roads. He was thinking about a young woman standing in a courtroom, wiping spit from her face, her hands shaking but her voice still steady enough to argue law in front of a judge who wanted her gone. He had seen a lot of opposing lawyers over the years. Angry ones, arrogant ones, greedy ones, scared ones, but the most dangerous ones were always the ones who had nothing to lose. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya sat at the same kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of old documents she had borrowed from the county records office that afternoon. The papers smelled like dust and time. Some were typed on typewriters, some handwritten, some barely legible copies of copies. Her laptop was open, a legal pad beside it filled with notes and dates and names connected by arrows. Evelyn had gone to bed an hour ago, but Maya was still working, a mug of cold coffee sitting near her elbow. She was building a timeline. 1968. Property purchased by Thomas and Evelyn Williams. 1974. House expanded. Permit filed. 1989. Tax delinquency notice filed. 1990. Property listed as reverted to city. 1990. No record. 1992. No record. 1993. No record. 1994. Property listed again under Evelyn Williams. Maya frowned. That doesn't make sense, she whispered to herself. If the property had reverted to the city in 1990, how did it show up again under her grandmother's name 4 years later? There should have been a resale record, a transfer document, something, but there was nothing. Just a gap, a 4-year hole where ownership should have been recorded but wasn't. Maya leaned back in her chair, rubbing her eyes. "What are you hiding?" she murmured. She picked up one of the older documents again, a copy of a tax delinquency notice. The name on the document was stamped and signed by a city clerk. She stared at the signature for a long time. Then she reached for another document. Same department, different year, different signature. She pulled a third document, and a fourth. Same office, different signatures, all different. Maya sat up straighter now, her exhaustion fading, replaced by something else, the feeling she used to get in law school when she knew she had just found the weak point in an argument. She spread the documents out across the table, side by side. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay. Talk to me." Outside, the oak tree stood in the dark, its branches moving slightly in the night wind, its roots deep in the ground beneath the house. Inside, under the yellow kitchen light, Maya stared at the signatures again, and for the first time since the case had started, she felt something she hadn't felt in days: hope. Maya knew she couldn't beat him alone. The county records office opened at 8:30 in the morning, and by 8:20, Maya was already standing outside the gray concrete building with a paper cup of burnt coffee in her hand and a legal pad tucked under her arm. The building looked like every government building she had ever been in: square, colorless, and built in a decade when people thought windows were optional. Inside, the air smelled like paper, dust, and old carpet. A tired-looking woman sat behind a glass window with a small opening at the bottom for documents. Her name tag read, "Linda." "Can I help you?" Linda asked without looking up from her computer. "Yes, ma'am," Maya said politely. "I'm looking for property records from 1989 to 1994 for a property in Brookside. I need the original filings, not just the digital summaries." Linda finally looked up, studying Maya for a moment. "Those aren't fully digitized. You'll have to request the archive boxes." "That's what I'm here for," Maya said. Linda slid a form under the glass. "Fill this out. It'll take a while. Those boxes are in the basement. I'll wait." Linda gave her a small, almost sympathetic look. "Everybody says that. Basement's cold. Bring patience." "I brought coffee," Maya said. Linda almost smiled. An hour later, Maya sat alone at a long metal table in the basement archive room. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Around her were shelves filled with old bankers' boxes, each labeled with years and departments in fading marker. A maintenance fan hummed in the corner, pushing around cool air that smelled like cardboard and time. In front of her were 3 boxes labeled property tax, 1,988, 1,990, property tax, 1,990, 1,992, property tax, 1,992. 1,995. She opened the first box and started flipping through files, one property at a time, page by page. Most people would have found it mind-numbing. Maya found it calming. Paper didn't lie on purpose. People did. Paper just waited for someone patient enough to read it. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Around noon, Maya found the file she was looking for. Williams, Evelyn, Maple Street, Brookside. Inside were tax notices, payment receipts, and then the delinquency notice from 1,989 she had seen the night before. She kept flipping. 1,990. Notice of tax default. 1,990. Property listed as reverted to City of Atlanta. Then, nothing. No auction record. No resale record. No transfer of title. Nothing. Then suddenly, 1,994. Property tax bill issued to Evelyn Williams. Maya leaned back slowly in her chair. "That's not possible," she whispered. If the city had taken the property in 1990, they would have had to auction it, sell it, or transfer it. There had to be a record. There was always a record. Cities ran on records, unless someone didn't want there to be one. She went back through the box again, slower this time, checking every folder around the Williams file. Sometimes documents got misfiled. After another 40 minutes, she found something. A thin folder, almost empty, labeled Tax Transfer, Maple Street, 1,990. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a transfer authorization form. It stated that the property had been processed through the city for tax foreclosure and administrative handling. At the bottom was a signature from a city clerk authorizing the transfer. Maya stared at the name. She pulled out her phone and took a picture of the signature. Then she went back to the other box and started looking for other documents signed by the same clerk. It took another hour, but she finally found 2 more documents with the same name. She placed them side by side on the table. Same name, different signatures, not slightly different, completely different. Maya felt a slow chill move down her spine. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, now we're getting somewhere." Getting somewhere with what? The voice came from behind her. Maya turned. An older black man stood a few feet away, holding a stack of folders. He looked to be in his late 70s, tall but slightly stooped, wearing a brown jacket and a tie that looked like it had been tied the same way for 40 years. "I'm sorry," Maya said, a little embarrassed. "I didn't mean to talk out loud." "That's all right," the man said. "People talk to ghosts down here all the time." Maya smiled slightly. "Property records." The man nodded. "Figures. Only lawyers and lost people come down here." "I'm a lawyer," Maya said. The man raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" Maya almost laughed. "Yeah, I'm sure." He set his folders down on the table across from her. "What's the address?" "Maple Street, Brookside." He froze for just a fraction of a second. Most people wouldn't have noticed it. Maya did. "You know the area?" she asked. The man pulled out a chair and sat down slowly. "I know that area very well," he said. "Name's Elijah Brooks." Maya's eyes widened slightly. "Elijah Brooks? The civil rights attorney?" Elijah shrugged. "Retired civil rights attorney. Now I just argue with my doctor and read old files." "I read about you in law school," Maya said. "The Brooks versus City housing case." Elijah chuckled softly. "That was a long time ago. What are you doing in Brookside Records?" "My grandmother's house," Maya said. "They're trying to evict her. Developer says the city owned the property in 1990 and sold it to them." Elijah's expression changed. He leaned forward slightly. "Show me what you found." Maya slid the documents across the table and pointed at the signatures. Same clerk. 3 different signatures. And there's no auction record after the tax foreclosure. No transfer record. But somehow the property ends up back under my grandmother's name 4 years later. Elijah studied the papers for a long moment. He didn't say anything, but his eyes moved carefully over every line. Finally, he looked up at her. "You're not looking at a paperwork mistake," he said quietly. "What am I looking at?" Maya asked. Elijah tapped the transfer form with his finger. "You're looking at someone who moved that property through the system without leaving a trail. That means one of 2 things. Either someone was doing your grandmother a very big favor," he tapped the paper again, "or someone was setting up something they planned to come back for later." Maya felt her stomach tighten. You mean the developer? Elijah leaned back in his chair. I mean, people with money don't wait 30 years unless the land is going to be worth a lot more later. Highways change, zoning changes, cities expand, poor neighborhoods become expensive neighborhoods. He looked at her carefully. And when that happens, old paperwork starts to matter again. Maya looked down at the documents, then back at Elijah. So what do I do? Elijah watched her for a long moment before answering. Courtrooms are strange places, he said slowly. They're the only places in this country where a poor person and a rich person are supposed to be equal, but that only works if the poor person is smarter, more prepared, and tougher than the rich person's lawyer. He pushed the documents back toward her. You don't win this by arguing with that lawyer, Elijah said. You win this by finding what they're hiding. Because if those signatures are fake, that means the chain of title might be fake. And if the chain of title is fake, they don't own the land. Maya finished quietly. Elijah nodded once. Now you're thinking like a lawyer. Maya looked down at the papers again, then at her legal pad, then back at Elijah. For the first time since the bottle hit her face in that courtroom, she felt something different than fear. She felt direction. She gathered the documents carefully. Thank you, she said. Elijah stood, picking up his folders. Don't thank me yet, he said. You just stepped into a bigger fight than you think. Maya nodded slowly. Yeah, she said. I figured that out yesterday. As she packed up the files, Elijah watched her for a moment, and then said one more thing. Remember this, counselor, he said. You don't beat men like the one you're up against by shouting about justice. He pointed at the box of records. You beat them by proving the truth. So she started digging. The next 2 days became a blur of paper, coffee, and very little sleep. Maya built a timeline on the wall above her kitchen table using sticky notes, copies of records, and pieces of string she had borrowed from her grandmother's sewing kit. If someone walked into the kitchen, it would have looked a little crazy, like something out of a detective movie, but to Maya, it was the first time the case started to make sense. 1,968 Thomas and Evelyn Williams. Buy the house. 1,974 home improvement permit filed. 1,989 tax delinquency notice. 1,990 property marked as reverted to City of Atlanta. 1,990 transfer authorization signed by city clerk. 1,991. 1,993. No records. 1,994 property taxes issued again to Evelyn Williams. 2024 Hamilton Crown Development claims to own the land. A straight line of events should have existed between 1,990 and 1,994. Instead, there was a hole, and Maya had learned something in law school. Holes in paperwork usually meant someone had removed something on purpose. It was past midnight when she noticed something else. She was staring at the transfer authorization. Again, the one with the signature that didn't match the others. When she realized the form number printed in the bottom right corner looked different from the other city forms. She pulled 3 other transfer forms from different properties in the same year and laid them side by side. All the official forms had the same format, same seal, same form number series, except the one in her grandmother's file. That's not even the same form, Maya whispered. She checked the header again. It looked real. The logo looked real. The language was correct. But the form number didn't match the city's filing system from that year, which meant only one thing. It's a fake, she said quietly. From the living room, Evelyn's voice called out, half asleep. You say something, baby? Maya stood up and walked into the living room holding the paper. Grandma, do you remember anything about 1,990? About the house? Any letters? Any court? Anything? Evelyn adjusted her glasses slowly. 1990. That was after your granddaddy passed. I was working 2 jobs then. Hospital in the morning, laundry service at night. I remember I got behind on taxes 1 year. Real behind. Thought I was gonna lose the house. What happened? Maya asked. A man came to see me, Evelyn said. From the city, I think. Said there was a paperwork issue, but I could set up a payment plan and fix it. I paid every month for years after that. Do you remember his name? Evelyn shook her head. No. Tall man. Nice suit. Didn't talk much. Just said, Mrs. Williams, don't worry, we'll get this sorted out. And we did. I never heard about it again. Maya felt a chill run down her arms. A tall man in a nice suit. Not a clerk. Not a collections officer. Someone else. Grandma. Maya said slowly. Did you ever go to court for the taxes? No. Did you ever sign any papers transferring the house? No. Did anyone ever tell you the city took the house? No. Evelyn said. I would remember that. Maya looked down at the paper in her hand again. If Evelyn never went to court, never signed a transfer, and kept paying taxes, then the city might never have legally taken the property at all, which meant Hamilton Crown might have bought land from someone who never owned it, which meant their entire case, the eviction, the development, everything might be built on a forged document. Maya walked back into the kitchen and stared at the timeline on the wall. If this is fake, she said to herself, then someone inside the city helped create it. And if someone inside the city helped create it, this wasn't just a civil case anymore. This was fraud. The next morning, Maya went back downtown. This time not to the records office, but to a small brick building a few blocks from the courthouse. A sign on the door read, Brooks and Associates, Attorneys at Law, though the gold lettering was faded and one of the lights above the sign was broken. Inside, the office looked like it had been frozen somewhere around 1985. Wood paneling on the walls, old law books, framed newspaper articles about civil rights cases, a coffee machine that looked older than Maya. Elijah Brooks sat behind a desk, covered in open books and legal pads. He looked up when she walked in. You find something, he said. It wasn't a question. Maya placed the transfer form on his desk. This form number doesn't match any official city forms from that year, and the clerk's signatures don't match. And my grandmother says she never went to court and never signed anything. Elijah picked up the document and studied it carefully. He didn't rush. He didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. You're right, he said. This form is fake. Maya let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. If the form is fake, then the city never legally owned the property. And if the city never owned it, they couldn't sell it to Hamilton Crown. Elijah nodded. Which means Hamilton Crown doesn't own your grandmother's land. Maya sat down across from him. Then why would a company spend millions trying to evict one old woman if they don't even own the land? Elijah folded his hands on the desk. Because if they admit the deed is fake, they lose the entire development. And if they lose the development, they lose tens of millions of dollars. So instead, they push the case through fast, use a big law firm, a friendly judge, and hope nobody looks too closely at paperwork from 30 years ago. Maya thought about the judge throwing the bottle, about the way he had looked at her like she didn't belong there. They don't think I can prove it, she said quietly. Elijah gave a small smile. Most lawyers wouldn't even think to look. They'd argue procedure. They'd argue sympathy. You're doing the right thing. You're following the paper. He slid the fake transfer form back toward her. But listen to me carefully now, Elijah said. If you accuse a corporation and the city of fraud in open court, you better be able to prove it. Not suggest it. Not hint at it. Prove it. Judges don't like being told their courtroom is being used for a scam. Maya nodded. Then I need more. I need to prove the signature is fake and that the form isn't official. And you need to do it in 2 days. Elijah added. Maya looked at the paper again. How do I prove a 30-year-old signature is fake? Elijah stood up slowly and walked over to a bookshelf. He pulled out a thick, worn book and set it on the desk in front of her. Handwriting experts, he said. Document examiners. And city employment records. If the clerk whose name is on that form never worked there, or if that signature doesn't match their real one, you don't just have a defense. He looked at her directly. You have a weapon. Maya picked up the book and looked down at it, then back at the fake form. For the first time since this case began, she wasn't just trying to stop something from happening. Now, she was preparing to expose something, and that was a very different kind of fight. And that's when the pressure started. Maya first noticed it on Wednesday morning, the day before the next hearing. She was sitting at the small desk in her legal aid office, a converted storage room with one narrow window and a second-hand desk that wobbled if you leaned on it too hard. Her computer was old, the fan inside it making a soft grinding noise every few minutes. But it worked, and right now that was all she needed. She was drafting a motion to compel the city to produce the original property transfer records when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Hello, this is Maya Williams. Miss Williams. A man's voice said smoothly on the other end. My name is Daniel Crawford. I believe we met in court. Maya leaned back slowly in her chair. Yes, Mr. Crawford. I remember. I'm sure you do, he said lightly. I'm calling because I think we got off on the wrong foot yesterday. Maya said nothing. I wanted to talk to you like professionals, Daniel continued. Lawyer to lawyer, no judge, no audience, just a conversation. What do you want, Mr. Crawford? Maya asked. I want to solve a problem, he said. You have a client who is emotionally attached to a property. I have a client who is financially attached to a development. We can either fight for months, maybe years, or we can solve this in one afternoon. Maya stared at the motion on her computer screen. My client is not interested in selling. Everyone is interested in selling, Daniel replied calmly. They're just not always honest about their price. She's not selling, Maya repeated. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, $500,000 was the first offer. My client is prepared to increase that to $750,000. Maya felt her chest tighten slightly. That was more money than her grandmother had seen in her entire life. That's very generous, Maya said carefully. But the answer is still no. Daniel's voice changed slightly. Still polite, still calm, but colder. You're a legal aid attorney, Miss Williams, he said. You probably have student loans. You probably drive a car that's a few years old. You probably work 60 hours a week to help people who can't pay you. Maya didn't respond. My client is also prepared, Daniel continued, to offer you a consulting fee. Personally, there it was. Maya closed her eyes for a brief second. How much? She asked quietly. $200,000, Daniel said. For advising your client to accept the settlement and for stepping away from the case. No one needs to know. It would be perfectly discreet. Maya looked around her small office, the metal filing cabinet, the old carpet, the stack of unpaid utility bills in the corner she hadn't had time to sort yet. $200,000. That was more than she made in 4 years. You're asking me to betray my client, she said. I'm asking you to be realistic, Daniel replied. You can't win this case. You know that. The judge can barely stand you. The paperwork is on our side. And even if you delay this, we will eventually win. So the question is, do you want to lose and get nothing? Or do you want everyone to walk away comfortable? Maya's hand tightened around the phone. You know, Daniel added. I started out like you. Public defender's office. Thought I was going to save the world. Then I realized the world doesn't want to be saved. It wants to be negotiated with. I'm not for sale, Maya said quietly. Daniel sighed softly, like a man disappointed by a child's stubbornness. That's what they all say at the beginning. I'll see you in court, Mr. Crawford. She hung up before he could answer. For a long moment, she just sat there, staring at the wall. Then she opened her desk drawer, took out her phone, and saved the call recording. She had recorded the entire conversation. That afternoon, things got worse. When Maya arrived at the hospital to pick up her mother after her shift, she found Carol Williams sitting in the break room, still in her scrubs, looking tired and worried. What's wrong? Maya asked immediately. Carol hesitated. Hospital administration called me in today. They said the hospital is reviewing budgets. They might be cutting some positions. Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. Mom, they asked me if I had any family members involved in legal disputes with the city, Carol said quietly. They said it could create conflicts of interest for a city-funded hospital. Maya felt the room tilt slightly. They can't do that, she said. Carol gave a small, sad smile. Baby, there's a lot of things people can't do. Doesn't mean they don't try. Maya sat down across from her. I'm so sorry. Don't you apologize, Carol said firmly. You're doing the right thing. I just want you to understand what you're up against. These people don't fight fair. That night, when Maya got back to her grandmother's house, she noticed a car parked across the street. A dark sedan. Engine off. Lights off. Someone sitting inside. She pretended not to notice and walked up to the house. Inside, Evelyn was watching television, but she muted it as soon as Maya walked in. You got company outside, she said. I know, Maya replied. You in trouble? Evelyn asked. Maya shook her head slowly. No, I think it means we're getting close to something. Evelyn studied her for a moment, then nodded. Good, let him watch, Maybe they'll learn something. Maya smiled faintly, but when she went into the kitchen and spread the documents out again, her hands were shaking slightly. She looked at the fake transfer form. She thought about the phone call, the money, her mother's job, the car outside. Elijah's words came back to her. You just stepped into a bigger fight than you think. She sat down at the table and stared at the timeline on the wall. This isn't just about the house anymore, she whispered to herself. This was about pressure, about power, about how far people were willing to go when millions of dollars were on the line. She picked up her pen and wrote in big letters at the top of her legal pad, "Prove the signature is fake. Prove the form is fake. Prove the city never owned the land." Then she underlined the last sentence twice. Outside, the dark sedan remained parked across the street, a silent shape under the streetlight. Inside, Maya Williams kept working, the kitchen light glowing late into the night, as the clock on the wall ticked steadily toward Friday morning. Then things stopped being legal and started being dangerous. Maya woke up Thursday morning to the sound of a car door slamming outside. For a moment, she didn't move. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the hallway clock. Then she heard footsteps outside on the gravel, slow and deliberate. She sat up. Through the window she could see the dark sedan still parked across the street. It had been there when she went to bed. It was still there now. "Grandma?" she called softly. "I'm in the kitchen," Evelyn answered. Maya got dressed quickly and walked down the hallway. Evelyn was already sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in front of her, looking out the window like she had been awake for hours. "That car been there all night," Evelyn said without turning around. "I know," Maya replied. "You call the police? And tell them what?" Maya asked. "That someone is sitting in a car on a public street." Evelyn took a slow sip of coffee. "Your granddaddy used to say, when people start watching you, it means you're walking in the right direction." Maya sat down across from her and opened her laptop. Or the dangerous one. Around 10 o'clock, Maya drove downtown to meet the document examiner Elijah had recommended, a woman named Dr. Susan Patel, whose office was in a small professional building near the courthouse. The waiting room smelled like printer toner and lemon cleaner. Framed certificates covered the walls, forensic document examination, handwriting analysis, court-certified expert witness. Dr. Patel was in her 50s, with sharp eyes and a calm, precise way of speaking. She examined the transfer form and the comparison signatures under a bright desk lamp, using a magnifying lens. "How old did you say this document was?" Dr. Patel asked. 1990 sec, Maya said. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. "Ink patterns, pressure points, stroke order. These signatures were not written by the same person. Not even close. Different letter formation, different spacing, different pen pressure. This one," she tapped the signature on the transfer form. "This is someone trying to copy a name, not someone writing their own signature." "So it's a forgery?" Maya asked. "In my professional opinion," Dr. Patel said. "Yes. And not a very good one." Maya felt her heart start to beat faster. "Can you put that in a report? Something I can use in court?" Dr. Patel nodded. "I can prepare a preliminary opinion letter today and a full report later if needed. If this goes to trial, I can testify." Maya almost smiled for the first time all week. "Thank you." When she left the office, she felt something she hadn't felt since the case began: momentum. Real momentum. Proof. Not just suspicion. Not just a theory. But when she reached her car, she saw the same dark sedan parked across the street. This time, the engine was running. A man sat inside, talking on the phone, watching her. Maya stopped for a moment, then walked to her car, opened the door, and got in without looking at him again. Her hands were steady, but her heart was racing. "They're not just watching," she thought. "They're waiting." That night, she stayed up late again, organizing her evidence. The fake form, the mismatched signatures, the handwriting expert's preliminary letter, the missing transfer records, the timeline. Around midnight, she finally closed her laptop and rubbed her eyes. The house was quiet. Evelyn had gone to bed hours ago. Maya stood up and walked to the sink to get a glass of water. That was when she smelled it. At first, she thought it was something from outside. Then the smell got stronger. Gas. Her entire body went cold. "Grandma!" she shouted, running down the hallway. "Grandma, wake up! Now!" Evelyn opened her bedroom door, confused. What's wrong? Gas leak, Maya said quickly. We have to get out. Right now. Don't turn on any lights. They moved quickly, Maya grabbing her grandmother's arm and guiding her toward the front door. The smell was stronger in the living room now. Maya opened the front door and led Evelyn outside onto the lawn. The night air hit her face, cool and sharp. She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Yes, we have a gas leak, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. 1408 Maple Street. Please send the fire department. Across the street, the dark sedan was gone, Maya noticed immediately. Within 10 minutes, a fire truck and a city gas truck pulled up, lights flashing silently in the sleeping neighborhood. 2 firefighters went around the side of the house with flashlights and equipment. Maya and Evelyn stood on the sidewalk, wrapped in blankets one of the neighbors had brought out. After a few minutes, one of the firefighters came back around the corner, his face serious. Ma'am, he said, the gas line valve on the side of your house has been loosened. Not broken from age. Loosened. Recently. Maya felt a cold wave move through her chest. Are you saying someone did that on purpose? She asked. The firefighter hesitated. I'm saying valves don't usually turn themselves. Evelyn looked at Maya. Maya looked back at the house, at the oak tree, at the porch her grandfather had built. Someone had tried to turn their home into a bomb, not to kill them, just to make the house unsafe, to force the city to condemn it, to force them out. Legal pressure hadn't worked, money hadn't worked, so now they were trying fear. The firefighter handed Maya a temporary notice. We shut the gas off. You'll need a city inspector to sign off before it can be turned back on. Might take a few days. A few days, long enough for a hearing. Long enough for a judge to declare the house uninhabitable. Long enough to lose everything. Maya stared at the notice in her hand, then slowly folded it. Inside her chest, the fear was still there, but it was changing into something else now. Something colder, something focused. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Elijah, she said when he answered. They just tried to condemn the house. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Elijah said quietly, Good. Maya frowned. Good, good, he repeated. Because now it's not just a paperwork case anymore. Now it's a crime. And crimes leave evidence. And evidence wins cases. Maya looked at her house, at the dark windows, at the oak tree standing over the roof like it had for decades. They think they can scare me, she said quietly. Elijah's voice was calm on the phone. Can they? Maya thought about the courtroom, the bottle hitting her face, the handcuffs on her wrist, the car watching her, the gas line in the dark. She took a slow breath. No, she said. And for the first time, she realized something important. They were not just trying to win the case anymore. They were trying to stop her from getting to Friday. The deeper she looked, the uglier it became. Maya did not sleep that night. After the fire department left, and her grandmother finally fell asleep on the couch under 2 blankets, Maya sat at the kitchen table with the temporary gas shutoff notice in front of her, and the stack of property documents spread out like pieces of a puzzle that someone had tried very hard to hide. They loosened the valve, she thought. Not broke it. Loosened it. That meant someone wanted the house declared unsafe, not destroyed. They didn't want a fire. They wanted paperwork. Official paperwork. The kind of paperwork that would look very convincing in front of a judge who already thought she didn't belong in his courtroom. She picked up her phone and started making calls. By 9 the next morning, Maya was downtown again, this time at the city code enforcement office, a low brick building with a faded American flag out front and a waiting room full of contractors, landlords, and tired-looking people holding folders. She walked up to the front desk. Good morning. I'm looking for the inspection report filed last night for 1408 Maple Street. Gas leak report. The woman at the desk typed slowly, chewing gum. Yeah, there's a report. House flagged as potential safety hazard. Inspector noted gas valve compromised. I need the inspector's name, Maya said. The woman looked at the screen. Inspector Thomas Graves. Is he here today? The woman shrugged. Probably out in the field. Can I get a copy of the full report? The woman looked at her over her glasses. You the homeowner? I'm the attorney for the homeowner. That word attorney still felt strange in her mouth sometimes, like a coat she was still getting used to wearing. The woman printed a few pages and slid them across the counter. You didn't get this from me. she said quietly. But if I were you, I'd ask why an inspector was checking a gas line at 2 in the morning. Maya's eyes lifted slowly. 2 in the morning? The woman nodded slightly. That's what the report says. Maya took the papers and stepped aside, her mind already moving. Inspectors don't work at 2 in the morning. She flipped through the report. It stated that Inspector Graves had responded to an anonymous safety complaint and discovered a dangerous gas leak requiring immediate shutoff and further inspection. The report recommended the property be considered for temporary condemnation until repairs were approved. Anonymous complaint. 2 in the morning. Gas valve loosened, not broken. Maya felt something cold and clear settle into place in her mind. This wasn't random. This was scheduled. She left the building and immediately called Elijah. They filed an inspection report, she said. Inspector Thomas Graves. He claims he responded to an anonymous complaint at 2 in the morning and found the gas leak. Elijah was quiet for a moment. 2 in the morning, he repeated. That's not an inspection. That's a setup. That's what I think, Maya said. If the house gets condemned, the judge can order my grandmother out for safety reasons. Then the eviction case becomes irrelevant because she's already out of the house. Exactly, Elijah said. They stop fighting you in civil court and let the city remove her instead. Cleaner, faster, harder to fight. Maya leaned against the side of her car. So what do I do? You prove the inspector didn't just find a leak, Elijah said. You prove he caused it, or that he was sent there. Maya looked down at the report again. Inspector Thomas Graves. Okay, she said slowly. Then I need to find Mr. Graves. She found him faster than she expected. At 3 that afternoon, Maya sat in her car across the street from a small house, listed as Thomas Graves' address in the public employee directory. It was a modest place, small yard, old pickup truck in the driveway. At 3:42 p.m., a city vehicle pulled into the driveway. Maya waited. Graves got out of the car carrying a metal toolbox. He looked tired, middle-aged, the kind of man who had probably done the same job for 20 years and didn't expect anyone to ever question it. Maya got out of her car and walked up the driveway. Mr. Graves, she called. He turned, surprised. Yeah? My name is Maya Williams. I'm an attorney representing Evelyn Williams. You filed a gas inspection report on her property last night. The moment he heard the address, his face changed. Just a little, but enough. I did my job, he said quickly. There was a gas leak. I shut it off. That's it. At 2 in the morning? Maya asked. He shrugged. Anonymous complaint. I respond when I get a call. Maya stepped a little closer. Did you receive that call directly? Or did someone ask you to go there? Graves' eyes hardened. Look, lady, I don't have to explain my schedule to you. You might have to explain it to a judge, Maya said calmly. Especially if I bring in a forensic report that says the valve was deliberately loosened with a wrench. Graves said nothing. Maya watched him carefully. Mr. Graves, I think someone paid you to go to that house last night and create a problem that wasn't there before. And I think you know exactly who. That's a serious accusation, Graves said. But his voice didn't sound as confident as before. It's a serious case, Maya replied. And if I can prove the leak was intentional, this stops being a housing issue and starts being criminal tampering and attempted property damage. And if you were paid to do it, that becomes conspiracy. Graves looked away, toward his house, toward his truck, anywhere but at her. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a business card and handed it to him. You should talk to a lawyer, she said quietly, because whoever sent you to that house is not going to protect you when this ends up in a courtroom. She turned and started walking back to her car, then stopped and looked back at him. But I can, she said. If you tell the truth. She got into her car and drove away without saying anything else. That night, back at the kitchen table, Maya added a new line to the timeline on the wall. 2024 gas leak inspection ordered. 2024 valve deliberately loosened. 2024 attempt to condemn property before hearing. She stepped back and looked at the wall. The fake transfer document, the forged signature, the missing records, the inspector at 2 in the morning, the developer rushing the case, the judge refusing delays. This was bigger than a house. This was a system, and systems were harder to fight than people. But systems also made mistakes. Maya picked up her pen and wrote one more sentence on the legal pad. Follow the money. Then she circled it. Because people lied. Paper could be forged. Inspectors could be paid. But money always left a trail. That's when Maya stopped defending. She started attacking. Thursday night, the kitchen table no longer looked like a place where people ate dinner. It looked like a war room. Documents were spread everywhere. The fake transfer form, the handwriting expert's letter, copies of tax records, the gas inspection report, a yellow legal pad filled with notes, arrows, names, and questions. In the center of the table, Maya had written 3 names: Hamilton Crown Development, City Code Enforcement, Tomas Graves. Then she drew lines between them. Follow the money, she said quietly to herself. Evelyn sat across from her, wrapping leftovers in foil. You've been saying that all night, she said. Money go a lot of places. Question is, can you see where it went? That's what I'm trying to do, Maya said. She opened her laptop and logged into the public campaign finance database for the city. Political donations were public record. Elijah had told her that, years ago. Big developments don't happen without politicians, he had said. And politicians don't move without money. Maya searched for Hamilton Crown Development. Dozens of donations appeared. City council campaigns, zoning board elections, infrastructure committees. The numbers were large but legal. On paper, everything looked clean. But then she noticed a familiar name. Graves, Consulting LSE. She frowned and clicked on it. A small company. Listed owner. Thomas Graves. The same Thomas Graves who filed the gas inspection report. She sat up straighter. Graves Consulting had received consulting fees from Hamilton Crown Development over the past 2 years. Not huge amounts. 5,000 here, 7,000 there, 10,000 last year. Enough to matter. Enough to create a relationship. Grandma, Maya said slowly. Remember the inspector? The one from the gas leak? Evelyn nodded. Tall man, nervous eyes. He has a consulting company, Maya said. And that company has been getting paid by Hamilton Crown for 2 years. Evelyn stopped wrapping the foil. So the man who said the house was dangerous works for the people who want the house. Not officially, Maya said. But he's been getting money from them. Evelyn shook her head slowly. That don't sound legal. No, Maya said quietly. It doesn't. She printed the payment records and added them to the wall timeline. Then she wrote another line. Hamilton Crown payments. Thomas Graves. Gas leak report house condemned eviction. She stepped back and looked at the wall again. This is conspiracy, she whispered. Around 9 that night, there was a knock on the door. Both Maya and Evelyn froze. Another knock, louder this time. Maya walked slowly to the door and looked through the peephole. Thomas Graves stood on the porch. She opened the door, but didn't invite him in. I think we should talk, Graves said. You should talk to a lawyer, Maya replied. I did, he said. He said I should talk to you. Maya studied his face. He looked tired, sweaty, scared. That inspection report, Graves said quietly. I got a call Tuesday from a man who said he worked with Hamilton Crown. He said there had been complaints about a gas smell at that address and asked if I could go check it out after my shift. He said it would be easier at night because nobody would be in the way. Did he tell you to loosen the valve? Maya asked. Graves looked down. He said, sometimes valves get stuck and you gotta turn them to test pressure. He said if there was a leak, I should document it and file an emergency report. So you created the leak, Maya said. Graves didn't answer. You realize that's a crime, Maya said. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I figured that out when you came to my house. Why are you here? Maya asked. Graves swallowed. Because I got a call this afternoon. From the same man. He said if anyone asked questions, I should stick to the report. He said lawyers like you don't last long in cases like this. Maya felt a slow burn in her chest. Did he threaten you? Graves shook his head. Not directly, but I got 2 kids in college. Mortgage. I can't go to jail. Maya crossed her arms. So you came here to what? Warn me? Scare me? I came here to tell you I'll tell the truth, Graves said. If I get immunity. I didn't know they were trying to throw an old woman out. I thought it was just paperwork. Evelyn spoke from behind Maya. It's always just paperwork until somebody loses their home. Graves looked ashamed. Maya thought for a long moment. Then she said, if you testify that Hamilton Crown paid you and instructed you to create the gas issue, and if you sign a sworn affidavit, I will talk to the district attorney about cooperation. Graves nodded quickly. I'll sign. Maya stepped aside. Come in. They sat at the kitchen table. Maya typed while Graves spoke. Every word slow and careful. Name, dates, phone calls, payments, instructions. The night he loosened the valve. The report he filed. When he finished, Maya printed the affidavit and placed it in front of him. You understand that if you lie on this, it's perjury, she said. I'm done lying, Graves said quietly. He signed. Maya looked at the signature, then added the affidavit to the wall. Now the timeline looked different. Fake transfer document, forged signature, missing records, corporate payments to city inspector, gas leak sabotage, false safety report. This was no longer just a civil case. This was fraud, bribery, and criminal conspiracy. Maya looked at the clock on the wall. Thursday night. The hearing was Friday morning, less than 12 hours away. She gathered the documents into neat folders. Evidence A, Evidence B, Evidence C. Then she placed the recording of Daniel's bribe conversation onto a flash drive and put it in her bag. Evelyn watched her quietly. You ready? She asked. Maya thought about the courtroom, the judge, the bottle, the handcuffs, Daniel Crawford's smile. She thought about her mother almost losing her job, the car watching the house, the gas line in the dark. She looked at the wall one last time. They thought I was defending a house, Maya said quietly. They don't understand. What don't they understand? Evelyn asked. Maya picked up her bag. I'm not defending a house, she said. I'm exposing a crime. She turned off the kitchen light. Tomorrow, she said, we're not going to court to argue. She looked at her grandmother. We're going to court to end this. Friday morning, the courtroom was full. Word had spread faster than Maya expected. When she walked into courtroom 3B, people were already sitting in the gallery. Junior lawyers, clerks, a few reporters, and a handful of people from Brookside who had heard about the case and taken the morning off work to come downtown in their Sunday clothes. At the front of the room, Daniel Crawford stood at the plaintiff's table, calm and perfectly dressed as always. Flipping through a thick binder like this was just another routine morning. Judge Harper walked in a few minutes later, his robe flowing behind him, his expression already impatient. All rise. Everyone stood, then sat as the judge took his seat. Judge Harper looked directly at Maya. His eyes briefly flicked to her cheek, where the faint mark from the water bottle had finally faded. Miss Williams, he said, his tone cool. I assume you are prepared today. Yes, Your Honor, Maya said. Good, the judge replied, because I am not inclined to grant any more delays in this matter. Daniel stood. Your Honor, before we begin, the plaintiff would like to submit a new development. The property at 1408 Maple Street has been officially flagged as a safety hazard due to a gas leak. We have documentation from City Code Enforcement recommending temporary condemnation of the property. For the safety of the occupant, we are requesting immediate possession so repairs can be made. He handed the report to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Maya didn't move. She had expected this. Judge Harper adjusted his glasses and read the report. Gas leak, risk of explosion, recommendation of temporary condemnation. He read aloud. He looked at Maya. Miss Williams, if this report is accurate, I cannot allow an 82-year-old woman to remain in a potentially dangerous home. Daniel nodded solemnly, performing concern. My client is very worried about Miss Williams' safety, Your Honor. Maya stood slowly. Your Honor, the gas leak was not an accident. The room went quiet. Daniel sighed softly, as if he had expected this kind of argument. Your Honor, this is exactly what I warned the court about. Conspiracy theories instead of legal arguments. Maya didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the judge. Your Honor, I would like to call a witness, she said. This is a summary judgment hearing, Miss Williams, not a trial. Judge Harper replied. With respect, Your Honor, Maya said calmly. The plaintiff has introduced new evidence this morning, the gas inspection report, and is asking the court to act on it immediately. I am asking for the opportunity to respond to that evidence. The judge hesitated, then nodded once. One witness. Make it quick. Maya turned toward the back of the courtroom. The defense calls Thomas Graves. A murmur moved through the room as Graves walked in, wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt and looking like a man who had not slept at all. He was sworn in and sat in the witness chair. Maya walked slowly toward him. Mr. Graves, what is your occupation? I'm a city code enforcement inspector, he said. Did you file a report regarding a gas leak at 1408 Maple Street 2 nights ago? Yes. At what time did you arrive at the property? Graves swallowed. Around 2 in the morning. Is it normal for you to conduct inspections at 2 in the morning? Maya asked. No. Why were you there? Graves glanced at Daniel Crawford, who stared back at him without expression. I received a call, Graves said quietly, from a man who said he worked with Hamilton Crown Development. He asked me to go check the property. Daniel stood up immediately. Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. Maya spoke before the judge could respond. Your Honor, I am not offering this for the truth of what was said, but to explain the witness's actions and why he went to the property at 2 in the morning. Judge Harper looked at her for a moment, then nodded. Overruled. Continue. Maya turned back to Graves. When you arrived at the property, did you find a gas leak? Graves took a deep breath. I loosened the valve myself. The courtroom exploded into whispers. Judge Harper slammed his gavel. Order! Order! Maya didn't raise her voice. You loosened the valve yourself? Yes, Graves said, his voice shaking. I was told to check the line, and I loosened the valve to create a leak so I could file the report. Who told you to do that? Maya asked. Graves looked down at his hands. A man who said he was working for Hamilton Crown. He said they needed the house flagged as unsafe. Daniel stood again. Your Honor, this is outrageous. This witness is attempting to shift blame for his own misconduct onto my client, without evidence. Maya walked back to the defense table and picked up a folder. Your Honor, I would like to introduce Defense Exhibit B. She handed copies to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge and to Daniel. These are public financial records, Maya said. They show that a company owned by Thomas Graves has received multiple payments from Hamilton Crown Development over the past 2 years labeled as consulting fees. Judge Harper looked down at the documents, his expression changing. Maya continued. Your Honor, the plaintiff's company has been paying the city inspector who filed the report that nearly got my client's home condemned 2 days before this hearing. The courtroom was silent now. Maya reached for another folder. And that's not the only problem with the plaintiff's case, she said. Your Honor, I would like to introduce Defense Exhibit C, a forensic document examiner's report regarding the property transfer form from 1990 that the plaintiff's entire claim of ownership is based on. Daniel's head snapped up. Maya handed the report to the bailiff. The report concludes that the signature on the transfer document is a forgery, Maya said, and the form itself does not match official city forms from that year. In other words, Your Honor, the document that says the city owned my grandmother's property is fake. For a long moment, no one spoke. Judge Harper slowly removed his glasses and looked at Daniel Crawford. Mr. Crawford, the judge said quietly, do you have any explanation for why your client's claim to this property appears to be based on a forged document, and why a city inspector who has been receiving payments from your client attempted to have the defendant's home condemned 2 days before this hearing? Daniel Crawford, for the first time since Maya had met him, did not immediately have an answer, and in that silence, the entire case began to collapse. But the real trial had just begun. The silence in the courtroom after the judge's question felt heavy, like the air before a storm. Everyone was looking at Daniel Crawford now, the man who, just days ago, had walked into this same room like he owned it. Daniel slowly stood up, buttoning his jacket, buying himself a few seconds. Your Honor, he said calmly, my client purchased that property through what we believe to be a lawful transaction with the city. If there is an issue with the original transfer document from 1990, then that would be an issue with the city's records, not with my client. He spoke smoothly, confidently, like a man trying to move the blame from one place to another without anyone noticing. Maya watched him carefully. He was good. Very good. Judge Harper leaned forward slightly. And the payments to Mr. Graves? Daniel didn't hesitate. Hamilton Crown hires many independent contractors for various projects, environmental surveys, zoning consultations, structural assessments. If Mr. Graves has done consulting work for Hamilton Crown in the past, that does not mean my client instructed him to tamper with a gas line. Daniel turned slightly toward the witness stand. In fact, it sounds like Mr. Graves is admitting to committing a crime and is now attempting to reduce his own liability by blaming a large corporation. Graves shifted nervously in the witness chair. Daniel looked back at the judge. Your Honor, we have a forged document from 30 years ago that no one in this room created, and a city inspector who has just admitted under oath to tampering with a gas line. Neither of those things prove that Hamilton Crown does not currently hold valid title to the property. And neither of those things justify delaying this development any further. It was a strong recovery. Maya could feel the courtroom starting to lean back toward him. So this is where the real fight is, she thought. Judge Harper looked at Maya. Miss Williams, do you have anything further, or are we done with dramatic stories for this morning? The words were sharp, but not as cruel as before. Still, the message was clear. This is where you either prove it, or you lose. Maya reached into her bag slowly. Yes, Your Honor, she said. I have one more piece of evidence. She pulled out a small flash drive and walked it to the bailiff. Defense, Exhibit D. The bailiff handed it to the court clerk, who plugged it into the courtroom computer. The screen at the front of the courtroom flickered to life. Daniel watched Maya carefully now. No smile, no smirk. Your Honor, Maya said, her voice steady. This is an audio recording of a conversation between myself and Mr. Crawford 2 days ago in the hallway outside this courtroom. Daniel's head snapped toward her. You recorded me? Georgia is a one-party consent state, Maya replied calmly. I am a party to the conversation. The recording is legal. Judge Harper looked at Daniel. Mr. Crawford? Daniel's jaw tightened. I would like to hear this recording before I respond. Play it, the judge said. The speakers crackled for a second. Then Daniel Crawford's voice filled the courtroom, clear and unmistakable. My client is prepared to offer $750,000 for the property and $200,000 for you personally as a consulting fee. No one needs to know. The room went completely silent. On the recording, Maya's voice asked quietly, You're asking me to betray my client? Daniel's recorded voice responded, calm and confident, I'm asking you to be realistic. The recording ended. No one in the courtroom moved. Judge Harper stared at Daniel for a long moment. Is that your voice, Mr. Crawford? Daniel didn't answer immediately. For the first time, he looked like a man who had run out of prepared arguments. Yes, he said finally. But that was a settlement discussion taken out of context. A personal payment to opposing counsel is not a settlement discussion, the judge said coldly. It is a bribe. Daniel started to speak again, but Maya wasn't finished. Your Honor, she said. There is one more recording. She nodded to the clerk. Please play the second file. Another click. Another burst of static. Then Daniel's voice again, more irritated this time. If the house gets condemned, the eviction becomes irrelevant. I don't care how it happens. Just make sure she's out before Friday. A second voice, Thomas Graves, came through faintly. That's not exactly legal. Daniel's voice again. Then don't write it down. The recording stopped. The silence that followed was suffocating. Judge Harper's face had gone completely still, the way a person's face goes still when they are trying very hard to control their anger. He looked at Daniel Crawford for a very long time. Mr. Crawford, the judge said quietly. In my courtroom last week, I threw a water bottle at Miss Williams because I believed she was wasting this court's time. No one in the room dared to move. The judge continued. It appears I was wrong about who was wasting this court's time. Daniel said nothing. Judge Harper turned to the bailiff. Officer, I want you to contact the district attorney's office immediately. I am referring this matter for investigation of fraud, attempted unlawful eviction, bribery, and conspiracy to commit property tampering. Daniel's head snapped up. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. This is a civil matter. This stopped being a civil matter when someone forged a property transfer, bribed opposing counsel, and attempted to have an elderly woman removed from her home by sabotaging her gas line. The judge said, his voice rising now. You will sit down, Mr. Crawford. Daniel slowly sat. Judge Harper looked at Maya again. His expression was different now. Not friendly, not warm, but respectful. Miss Williams, he said, you asked this court for 48 hours. It appears you used that time effectively. Maya didn't trust herself to speak, so she simply nodded. The judge picked up his gavel, but didn't strike it yet. Let the record reflect, he said, that the plaintiff's motion for summary judgment is denied. The request for eviction is denied. The request for emergency condemnation based on the gas report is suspended pending criminal investigation. He finally brought the gavel down. And this court will be taking a very close look at how a forged document from 1990 became the foundation of a multi-million-dollar development project. The sound of the gavel echoed through the courtroom like a door slamming shut. For Daniel Crawford, it sounded like something else. It sounded like the beginning of the end. And that should have been the end. But it wasn't. 2 weeks after the hearing, the story was everywhere. Local news first, then regional, then national. City inspector admits to tampering in eviction case. Corporate attorney under investigation for bribery and fraud. Elderly homeowner wins major court battle against developer. Maya saw her own name on television one evening while sitting on her grandmother's couch, a plate of reheated cornbread in her lap. She almost didn't recognize herself in the courtroom footage, standing straight, speaking calmly, as if she had not been terrified just a few days earlier. Evelyn muted the television and looked at her. "You did good," she said simply. Maya shook her head slightly. "We did good." The investigation moved quickly after that. Once the district attorney's office started pulling records, more things began to surface. The forged transfer document from 1990 wasn't the only one. There were other properties, other neighborhoods, other gaps in records, where land had quietly moved from families who had lived there for decades into development companies that somehow always seemed to know which neighborhoods were about to become valuable. Thomas Graves cooperated, just like he promised. In exchange for his testimony, he avoided jail time. But he lost his job and his consulting contracts. The man who had called him a project manager at Hamilton Crown was arrested and charged with conspiracy and property tampering. Hamilton Crown Development publicly claimed they had no knowledge of any illegal activities, but they quietly withdrew their eviction case against Evelyn Williams and 3 other homeowners in Brookside within the same week. Daniel Crawford was different. Lawyers didn't get arrested as quickly as inspectors or project managers. They had firms, reputations, expensive defenses. But the state bar opened an ethics investigation, and the district attorney's office began reviewing the bribery recording. One afternoon, about a month after the hearing, Maya received a call from a blocked number. She almost didn't answer it. "Hello?" There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice she recognized immediately. "Miss Williams," Daniel Crawford said. Maya didn't speak for a moment. She walked out onto the front porch and closed the screen door behind her. "What do you want, Mr. Crawford?" she asked. "I wanted to tell you something," he said. His voice sounded different now. Tired. Quieter. "In 30 years of practicing law, I have never lost a case like that." "There's a first time for everything," Maya replied. He let out a small breath that might have been a laugh. "Do you know what my mistake was?" "You tried to evict the wrong grandmother," Maya said. "No," Daniel said. "My mistake was that I thought this was about property, about contracts, about money." He paused. "You weren't fighting for any of those things, were you?" Maya looked out at the oak tree in the front yard, its leaves moving slowly in the afternoon wind. "No," she said, "I wasn't." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. "You remind me of someone I used to be," he said finally. "A long time ago, before I started winning so much that I forgot why I became a lawyer in the first place." Maya didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. "The bar is probably going to suspend my license," Daniel continued. "Maybe disbar me. The firm has already asked me to resign. 30 years of work, gone because of one case." "You didn't lose everything because of one case," Maya said quietly. "You lost it because of what you did in that case." There was a long silence on the line. "You're right," Daniel said finally. "I just wanted to hear you say it." He hung up without saying goodbye. Maya stood on the porch for a long time after the call ended, looking out at the neighborhood. Kids were riding bikes down the street. Someone was mowing a lawn. A delivery truck stopped 2 houses down. Normal life. The kind of life that almost disappeared because of paperwork and money, and people in tall buildings making decisions about streets they had never walked down. 2 months later, the city announced a new investigation into old property transfers in Brookside and 2 neighboring communities. A legal aid organization offered Maya a permanent position with her own small office and the ability to hire 1 assistant. She took the job, but she didn't move downtown. Instead, she rented a small storefront on the corner of Maple Street, 3 blocks from her grandmother's house. The sign above the door read, "Williams, Legal Clinic, Community Law, Housing, Elder Rights." The office wasn't fancy. The desk was secondhand. The chairs didn't match. The paint on the walls was a little uneven because Maya and her mother had painted it themselves on a Saturday afternoon. while Evelyn sat in a folding chair and told them they were doing it wrong. On the first morning the office opened, Maya arrived early and unlocked the door. She stepped inside and stood there for a moment, looking at the small room, the desk, the files, the coffee maker in the corner. She ran her hand across the desk and sat down. At 9:15, there was a knock on the door. Maya looked up. A woman stood outside holding a stack of papers in one hand and the hand of a little boy in the other. The woman looked nervous, like she wasn't sure she should even be there. Maya stood and opened the door. "I'm sorry," the woman said quickly. "I don't have much money. Actually, I don't have any. But someone told me you help people who are about to lose their homes." Maya looked at the eviction notice in the woman's hand. Then she looked at the little boy standing beside her, holding a toy car and staring up at her with wide eyes. For a brief moment, Maya saw herself at 10 years old, standing on a sidewalk, holding her mother's hand, watching strangers carry their lives out of a house. She stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Come in," Maya said gently. "Sit down. Tell me what happened." The woman sat. The little boy sat beside her. Maya picked up a pen and opened a new file. Outside, on Maple Street, the oak tree stood in the front yard of Evelyn Williams' house, its roots deep in the ground, its branches wide, unmoved by the storms that had tried to tear it down. Inside the small office, Maya Williams began working on the next case, because justice, she had learned, did not arrive on its own. Sometimes, it had to be invited in, and sometimes, it had to be defended, one house at a time. This story reminds us that justice is not always loud, and it is not always fast, but it belongs to those who refuse to give up. Maya was humiliated, threatened, and offered money to walk away, and at many moments she was afraid. But she kept going, not because she was the strongest person in the room, but because she knew what she was fighting for. She wasn't fighting for a house. She was fighting for dignity, for truth, and for the idea that the law should protect the weak, not just the powerful. The lesson is simple but powerful. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision that something else is more important than fear. And sometimes, all it takes to change an unfair system is one person who refuses to sit down, refuses to be silent, and refuses to sell their conscience. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.